Hello, it's Wednesday, Woden's Day, and I'm back with no more incredibly incrementally slow progress on the P-38. So far, I have assembled mostly all but this bit here that you can't see because it's off screen. Mostly step one of two engines, and I've got the parts here. All these parts for step two of one of the two engines. And then the next parts are the landing gear and the landing gear housing, all of this sort of stuff, the left main gear, all the left things, and the right things, and then the left things, and then the pod comes around it. And that when this happens, all of this that has been done gets disappeared. Pretty much just disappeared and enclosed in the pylon. And the part that does show up here, I believe later on, if I look later on, okay, I believe most of that, yeah, well, a lot of that gets covered up as well. So some of the piping, some of the ductwork for the superchargers, it's about the only thing that ends up showing. But you can see here, when you look at everything gets covered up. So you wonder why even bother with all of this? I don't know. So today I need to touch up these little rubber pieces, do a whole lot of prep work on these parts so that they can be primed, and see how far I can get getting those parts ready to be primed so that they can all be painted light gray. Everything's painted light gray here, this color. Not not very not very exciting. So there. Um, I guess I might as well just start getting to it. Some other things I'm planning to do, I need to touch these up, like gray on the ends there where the clips were holding them while I was painting it. And I need to test a wash on the gray to see if I like it or not. But those can, those, it's not a rush to get that done. But unless I get these parts prepped, I can't prime them. If I don't prime them, and I can't paint them. And if they're not painted, then they can't be assembled. So on we go here. These white dots are filler. I put filler in because there's little indentations in the molding process that I'm hoping to get rid of. Let's see how that goes. So I got this part done. Mostly, and it's still not. No, still not. When it was molded very poorly, and yeah, it has ridges on it. And I thought I got them, but I didn't. So I need to keep working on this bit. Hmm. I don't know how I missed that. And it was near the end of the stream. And it was more sanding than I thought it needed. That, by the way, you look at that. My brother thought that was dirt under my fingernail. It's not. That's the remnant of an injury that has almost but not quite grown out. In case you're wondering if I have bad fingernail hygiene, that's not the issue. I just have you know, you hurt your finger, like smash it or jam it or poke it or something, and it gets under the nail, and it does not disappear until the nail grows out, and it hasn't done that yet. More and more, I'm needing to just use the head magnifiers to see what I'm doing. So the part here, the molding seam came right along this edge, all the way across this. That's where the screw is attached. You can still see a little bit of mark there, and then across the top of this tank, which I just, I spend all this time sanding it down and then actually polishing it a little bit, which is a total waste of time. It really is because this will never be seen once the model is put together. I guess, the thing is, well, I'll know it's there, but that's about all you can say for it. I think this one was done. And there's a little bit of plastic there. Okay. This whole thing just needs to be sanded flat. I'll do that a little later. I'll do this one. Let's see. Yeah, the screw is attached here and here and here, and there is a ridge pretty much around the whole thing where the two parts of the mold came together. Excuse me. Every once in a while, I just sort of inhale a little bit of salt. Been doing that for years and years, and it's really annoying to everybody. Yeah, well, it's a pretty big ridge on there in the mold. I use the file. I keep saying this over and over and over and over, repeating myself. Get about 85, 90% of it off, and then try to stop from using the file before I start damaging the part by gouging it. This is the fastest way to get most of the screw off. And you say, why didn't you just cut it closer to the part and not clean so much off? And the answer is because um, um uh, that's right. The file slips off the part, hits the other part. 'Cause I'm just not that good at it. So if I try to cut it off closer, I'll probably cut into the part and damage it, and then that would be a problem. So people who are younger or just more skilled or both would use one of these cool little power sanders. They have them that would do this in, I don't know, 20% of the time that I'm taking, 5 times faster. But I know for sure that if I had one of those, I would just be destroying the part. They're not very expensive. I had actually been kind of tempted to get one just to try it, but wow, this pipe is really a mess. I don't know if you can see it or not, but right along both sides here is just a big ridge from the molding, and a really big ridge, which makes this look not like a pipe. Or if it does look like a pipe, it's a damaged pipe. And it's so bad that probably the process of sanding that away will distort the pipe so it looks not round but ovalish. And so once again, I will be spending many, many minutes of my life and yours, if you're paying attention to this at all, um, getting rid of flaws in the original plastic that, once the model is complete, will be completely invisible. Yep. But you know, trying to make a good model, and a good model shouldn't have all these bumps and ridges and things on the pipes. You know, the 3D printer's working. You can probably hear it. I don't know if you can see it behind me. Yeah, my head's right in the way. You know, stuff's actually getting printed on it. It's been quite a while, I think, since that's been printing. So the stream's been going on for a long, long time. I made a list. I think I built 11 models. Seriously, at the pace at which this stuff gets done, you probably go, well, yeah, in the span of a couple of years, you might have gotten two done. But no, I've actually built 10 or 11. I made a list of them just, and it surprised me. I was surprised at how many were completed. I think I even know where most of them are. You know, after they're done, they get stuck in a box or on a shelf or something. They just sort of disappear. I'm glad there's only one of these on each engine. Excuse me. So what I was saying, and I stopped saying what I was saying, is that I don't have anything much to talk about anymore. You know, I've gone through 50s and 60s and maybe, some of the 70s television. Um, I've talked about vacuum tubes. I've talked about TV antennas. I've talked about car maintenance. Um, Talked about changes in auto racing that happened during that period of time. All this kind of historical stuff that nobody really cares about, but fills the time. Um, and I've used it all up. What more is there to say? Talked about cartoon theme songs, superheroes or not, the controversy one can have about whether a character is actually a superhero or not. I'm just recounting all the things I've already talked about, and in doing so, it's pretty clear that I've used up almost everything I know anything about or remember. I've been spending a lot of time talking about what I'm doing when I'm just rubbing a piece with a piece of sandpaper, getting rid of molding flaws like this over here, where the parts of the mold did not really fit together very well. Talk about how, when there's a discontinuity like that, you can see the different colors where the high spot is being sanded away compared to the low spot. And that when the color becomes uniform, then you can be pretty sure. You still have to touch, fingernail and fingertip it to feel it. If you really wanted to be sure, if I was really wanted to be sure, I would put on my head magnifier and take a look at it. And then I would see that what I thought was fine really isn't. I figure if I can't really see it under this light this close, that somebody who sees the model 18 inches away under indirect lighting isn't going to notice it. If that's so when I yeah, but I definitely decided that because most of this is pretty well detailed, the engine, um, and then becomes hidden inside the model, that I made the commitment and bought the parts to get the parts that are kind of structural. That is to say that they're necessary for the model to hold together. Not the entire engine, but just the parts like the engine block to which things attach. Okay. Actually, yeah, I didn't even need that. Probably could get by without that at all even. But I'm going to build one of these engines as a display piece. And as I put this together, I'll be able to see how much of this I can. Well, the engine, the engine itself, probably not these side brackets, okay, but the engine itself, but not the mounting hardware. That's the part that comes in and out. I mean, this part would just stay on the plane, and these brackets would be attached to the engine and attached to the firewall. Okay, but they're not part of the engine, so I don't have extras of those, I don't think. No, I'm pretty sure I don't. 8 and 11. So, so eventually I'll have the left side done. I'll have the left pod done. And then make a decision then about what needs to be actually included. Wow, that's really bad there. Right where this pipe turns is really, really poorly done. Kind of on the bottom. If it's put in like this is how it's inserted. This part under here doesn't really show that much, but it is very, very much not. This is very, very much not like a pipe. Very, very much like a mess. I don't think we have the pop filter on the microphone. You can probably hear the 3D printer. It's making really odd noises, loopy kind of noises. I should probably turn around and check out what's printing. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I thought I had it, but just rub my finger over it, and I could feel the ridge. I had not totally successfully sanded away. Well, as I frequently say when I'm doing this, better than it was. Let's do these guys through there. Excess plastic on the edges. It's mostly around the edges. That's good. And there are molding circles on this, little ones here, 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 but they are on the inside where it attaches, so they won't show. Okay, that's good. And there's a just that edge, that ridge right along the center of all of these little pipes. So they all need to be sanded all the way around. Hi, thanks for joining in. I have to get up close to see because I still don't have my large print chat screen. I'm filing and sanding mounting brackets pretty much. Remainder of the engine parts and mounting brackets for one of the two engines of the P-38. And I'm hoping to get these prepped so that I can prime them either today or tomorrow so that all of this gets painted the same bland light gray color. And they all require two coats. I've discovered that with the gray. And so I'll be, painting them and then doing something else. I don't know what that else will be. And waiting for the paint to dry so I can put a second coat on. Oh, these guys will take it a little longer, I guess. I should have started with them. I didn't. Because each of these is made up of two parts that need to be cemented together. And I should cement those together today so that on Friday I can clean up the seams. I guess after I do these, I might as well finish these brackets, or at least this one. I will then work on those parts so that I can cement them together. And then after those are cemented together, the two halves are cemented together. And that will have a seam that will need to be sanded out and maybe filled. Again, kind of pointlessly because that whole thing gets covered up by another part of the model, by the pylon itself. And so, yeah, all of this stuff ends up being invisible. That is to say, not visible. I mean, it doesn't just disappear, so it's invisible, but it's not visible when the model is completed. And so one can ask not only why am I bothering making sure that the parts all look good and don't have seams on from the mold, but why did the model maker even make the parts to begin with? Because they will not be seen. That I do not know. But since they're here, I'm going to do my best to make them look good. So as I do this, as this pylon gets completed sometime yet this year, I'm not sure when because I'm gone a lot. Um, once this side, the left pylon, gets completed, that will tell me how many of these parts I can use for a display engine. I know that I can use the engine block, um, and all of the piping and ductwork that's attached to it. I know I can do that without compromising the appearance of the final model. I don't know about these brackets. Okay, these mounting brackets. I don't know whether I can use the parts, whether I can use it as a display or not. I don't know that. I mean, for like these side brackets, I really kind of like to be able to use them. But these are the brackets that attach it to the firewall. And I know that the firewall needs to be there because other things get attached to that. So I guess I'll just probably just not use these on the display. Because the parts that I bought, the extra parts that I bought. I don't know. Maybe I'll have that. Maybe I do have extras. I should look. That'd be kind of nice if I did because I'm pretty sure. No, I'm pretty sure I don't. They're lower numbered H. The parts that I bought are high numbered H, like 28 and 30 and that kind of thing. This is a 10 and a 7. I have to spend another $20 on a set of parts to get it. So I guess that's just not going to happen. Can't get there from here. So why am I messing with all this? It's because when the part is molded, it leaves a line, like a ridge. The two halves of the mold come together. And this little blob that I'm sanding here is where it was attached to the screw, or sometimes you call it the tree. and it usually just leaves a little fine line right along the center of the part. Sometimes it's more than a fine line. Sometimes it's a really big ridge. Sometimes the two parts of the mold aren't aligned, and one side is higher than the other, and that's a real mess. Because then, in order to sand that out to make the part not look like it's got two different parts stuck together, it can actually distort the shape of the part. But it's either that or the alternative, which is I keep seeing a line there. I don't feel it. This is the top of it, so this is the part that really shows. Well, it doesn't. This is the part that would show if it showed. That is to say, if the part could be seen, this is the part of the part that would be seen. But as I've said, the part's not going to be seen because it's buried inside the pylon. And a less expensive version of this model, all these parts they wouldn't exist because they would only mold the parts that were actually visible when the model was constructed. So you'd see this propeller, the propeller and the spinner, and maybe the a little version of the very front of the engine, but that would be about it. And all the rest of this wouldn't be made at all. Excuse me, I need to blow my nose here, clean it up. Hmm. What's the time going here anyway? Yeah, I haven't even spent an hour yet. Okay, felt like forever. So after this and this, I still have these two pieces and these itty bitty pieces in the box. Even though they're tiny, or one is tiny and one is fragile, they'll still have sprue attached to them that will need to be cleaned off without losing the part or breaking it, one or the other. This is a skilled amateur suggestion is that when you get a little part like these little bits in here, and you have to get the screw off, and it's really hard because you can't hold it, is do it over a box like this, so that if you drop it, more likely than not, it'll fall into the box and you'll be able to find it, as opposed to doing it out here, where if you drop it, more likely than not, it'll bounce onto the floor and get lost. How do I know that? Because I have, in fact, had the parts bounce, and fortunately, I was able to find it. It was really kind of miraculous. But I also have done it over a box like that. And when I've done it over a box like that, I have dropped them several times and they've fallen into the box. And sometimes they bounce around, even if I put a paper towel down to kind of cushion it. Sometimes they'll bounce around an amazing amount. It's really kind of surprising how a dropped, well, you all know this, if anybody's dropped anything, you think you saw exactly where it landed, right? and you go and look and it's not there. And it could end up, depending on the part, piece, the surface, how bouncy it would be, you could find it like 2 or 3 feet away from where you thought it landed. And when you're dealing with a tiny little piece like that piece of plastic, or some of these pieces that will be eventually attached, or like some of the pieces that were on the GT 350, I mean, really, really small. And sometimes they're pretty close to the color of the surface that they're landing on, and that makes it even harder. Or there's furniture around and they can fall underneath the furniture. So, yeah, if you're dealing with a part that's small enough that there's a good chance, a pretty high chance, not a good chance, it's a bad chance, really, but that there's a significant chance that you could drop it. Um, I really recommend doing that, even though it's a little bit awkward, over a box. And then when you do drop it, and you will, when you do drop it, your odds of finding it again are much higher because it will drop in the box. Even then, sometimes, like, I don't know if you can see, there's a flap there, right? There's a little opening under the flap. The corner's kind of open. I've had a part fall into the box and get lodged underneath that. It's like, I know it's in the box somewhere. Where is it? And it turns out to be under the attached the flap in the box. And something wants to get away from you. And you don't. I don't want to attribute intentionality to little pieces of plastic. But boy, sometimes it acts like it. How could this possibly disappear? Like a runaway that's trying to hide. You know, the mold on this side, this part is pretty much like the other part. Just the opposite of it. Really, much much bigger ridge, much bigger molding ridge on this than on the other one. Even on the same sprue, you know, the molds, they're big. The size of this box are bigger. The mold, and one part of it might be just fine, and the other part of it might slip a little bit. Cut the parts off the sprue, and half of them are just fine, and the other half are a mess. And just listening to the 3D printer, and I have to say that the sounds it's making are definitely more entertaining than me. Maybe I should just let everybody just listen to that. And as I said that, then oh, you're. Yeah. I was just going to say, as I said that, then it went quiet. But now it's back again. Like it's having a conversation with it. So it's kind of fun actually listening to it. I hope you can hear it. I'm pretty sure the filter off of the microphone after a software update a long time ago. There used to be a pop filter on this microphone that filtered out the sound of the paint stirring thing and the furnace fan and I think even the dogs barking everyone filtered that out. But it came off after a software update a long time ago, probably like 7 or 8 months ago. I don't really remember, but I remember that it was off. Somebody said, "Oh, is your pop filter off?" And I said, "I don't know. Why do you ask?" I said, "Because I can hear all sorts of weird background noises." And I said, "Fine. At least that'll make it more interesting." So let's see. What's the big news? Oh, yeah, the World Cup is going on. They're down to 16 teams now. Yeah, I think they're down to 16 teams. And there's been all sorts of controversy, of course, because there has to be with FIFA or FIFA, however you feel like saying it. Let's see, who was it? Somebody was behind Egypt and somebody in the team that won, Netherlands, maybe. They were behind 2-0 with 11 minutes to play. And if you've ever watched football, or as in the states here we call it soccer. I don't know why no one else in the entire world calls it soccer, but we do. But football, you can go. They play 90 minutes plus extra time, and manage to usually not like score once. Maybe one team will score once. To have two goals in the game is pretty amazing. But they were behind 2-0 with 11 minutes left. So that's pretty much over, right? No, they scored three goals in 11 minutes. So if you can score three goals in 11 minutes, why do you go 80 minutes not scoring any? In fact, I was reading there are some statistics that were showing that the majority of goals in these games are scored like in the last 20% of the second half. Just, you know, and I'm not sure. I think, that the team can score three goals in 11 minutes. That means that there's potential there for just a huge amount of offensive pressure, right? So why don't we have games, matches that have scores of like 8-11, 11-8, or something like that? It probably would be possible. But I'm guessing that soccer players, football players, are more, designed for sprint than endurance. I'm just guessing, and that keep up that kind of pressing offense, even though it would be potentially overwhelming. They just can't do it. I'm not sure, but it just, that so many goals are scored in such little time right near the end of a match. If you can press your offense and score 3 goals in roughly 11 minutes, that the defense is pretty porous. Okay, I guess that'll do. Let's see what these parts are up to here. They come apart like this. Yeah, and yeah, there's a screw attachment here and 2 on the top. And if that's not on there, probably fit better. Nice curved surface here that makes cleaning this off a little harder. Creates more of an opportunity for inadvertent gouging. Inadvertent gouging as opposed to verdant gouging. Yeah, tactical. Yeah, that's it. It's just sit around for 45 minutes in the first half, and maybe there'll be one. Sometimes you look at the statistics, and there's 3 shots on goal, if that. Feeling each other out. That's kind of a weird thing to say, but I'm trying to see what the other team, how they respond. It's kind of odd, like in hockey, you also end up with really low scoring games, right? Goals are rare, but things are like they're just moving all the time. There's more shots on goals. The defense is, aggressive, checking and that kind of thing. Seems to make it a more interesting game. This one's not too badly positioned. It's a really heavy screw, but it's kind of on the inside. There seem to be, let's say, fewer fake injuries this time around. I'm not sure compared to other years, where someone is barely brushed and they fall on the ground writhing, trying to attract a penalty. I'm not sure what it is. There seems to be more contact without uh, people flopping to the ground or penalties being called. or maybe it's just, maybe that's not the case, but that's the impression I was getting from the matches that I've watched. I'm not sure. Hmm. So maybe the referees are just. I've read somewhere that there was like clamping down on fake injuries. No, just don't do it. People can tell. You know, but it's you see somebody barely brush into someone. A player lands on the ground and starts writhing. Maybe there's a penalty kick given or a free kick. And then the person just it pops up just fine, starts running. Like, really? But there does seem to be less of it this time, which is good because it's just really annoying. There has been some pretty spectacular plays. Occasionally, you just see somebody doing something that I know I would not anywhere be close to being capable of doing. Yeah, it's just once people start getting away with it, then everybody gets away with it. And then how do you stop it? Because sometimes there really is a real injury. Somebody gets a torn tendon or a serious sprain. Mm. Yeah, and then there's some really obvious fouls. You know, like when someone comes up from behind someone and bait and just knocks them completely over. That's okay. Well, yeah, that was a foul that should be called. No doubt about that. And I have to say that it just sometimes it's just not interesting to watch. There was one team, I think it was in the World Cup, the last World Cup. I can't remember what it was. They set a record for the number of passes, 1,500 passes or something in the game. Nothing happened. They just sat back on their half of the field and passed the ball back and left and right, forward and back. And there wasn't any aggressive defense. The defense just sat back, waiting for something to happen, and nothing happened. Nothing ever did. Okay, and just passing the ball around. Not surprising that that match would end in a tie. But speaking of ties, okay, I did this rant once before, and I think it's worth repeating. Okay, so in these knockout rounds, A match can't be allowed to end in a tie because somebody's got to get knocked out, right? So you play 90 minutes plus your extra time, and the score is tied. So what do? You do goalkeeper practice. Really? I just find that I find it really sad. Okay, that whether people were playing hard or effectively or skilled or not isn't really the point. But they did play for 90 minutes, sometimes 100 minutes. There's been a lot of extra time on some of these. Um, and then you just have somebody shoot at the goalkeeper. I mean, I call it goalkeeper practice. It is. It's just that, and it's why did you even bother? Why did you even bother playing all this time? Why didn't you just you know, send some people out and kick at the net? And how to resolve these ties in different sports is, uh, you know, it's not well done. Baseball used to be pretty honest. Used to be. It still is in the playoffs. Okay, but during the regular season, it used to be that every you just added extra innings. Okay, so if you were tied after nine, you play. Each team would have an at bat in the 10th inning, and if one team didn't score more runs than the other during that extra inning, you'd add more, and you could have really long games. I mean, really long games. You could go 17, 18, 19 innings. It was rare that it went past 11 or 12, like two or three extra innings. But in order to speed up the game, I mean, they do this. It's in the 10th inning, you start with a person on second base. Really? Because they want somebody to score a run and the extra inning time. It's like it just it cheapens the game as far as I can tell, in my opinion. It just does. It just says, oh, we're just going to shorten this. Basketball isn't too bad. They just add extra time. I mean, it's not like if it were like football, as opposed to American football, what we call soccer football, what we call soccer and is football. What the equivalent in basketball? This would be pretty stupid, but I shouldn't even say it. They'll probably start doing it. Is so if you're tied, you might play like one extra 5 minute period or something. Okay, overtime period. That's what they call it. It's overtime. You might play one, and then you take your five players and they each throw two free throws. I mean that's what it would be like. You take your five players and each of them throws two free throws, and um, there's 10 free throws for each team, and whoever scores the most wins. And if it's still tied after that, and you send each team sends another player up to throw two free throws. But tennis used to be more honest too. It used to be you just kept playing until somebody was ahead by 2 points. Okay, but now they've got this tiebreaker system. I don't know. It's just let it end in a tie. Maybe you should just do that. Hmm. Yeah, there's a little ridge. Yeah, that's enough plastic there to keep it from fitting. Some some go to sudden death over time. You know, that was American football used to do that. That was whichever you go into extra time and whoever scores first wins, which was kind of exciting. But now they change it so each team gets at least one possession, and they try to shorten it. I think it was just fine when games just ended in ties. But yeah, I just need to complain about that. I do the way, especially though in football with the penalty kicks. After playing for a very very long time, why do these not come together here? There's just a gap there that doesn't close. I mean, I can fill that in and sand it out, even though it's going to be invisible. It's pretty annoying that it doesn't close up. Even squeezing it, I'm not sure. It doesn't feel like there's anything in the way. I'll just cement it, and that'll be. Might have to fix it that way with filler. Well, I did a really poor. Oh yeah, this was because of the curve. It was really hard to get the saw in there, and I found that with some curves that getting the saw in there can lead to a scratch. The saw blade will hit in a different place and gouge the surface. And I still insist on using the saw as opposed to a hobby knife because it just seems to give more control and is less likely to break the part. And I think it makes the cleanup more difficult. Huh, this is pretty good. It's been mostly on camera the whole time. I'm always surprised. I'm always surprised at that. I mean, very much, honestly, always surprised that it's on camera because I am quite frequently off camera. But I know that they want these things to end. But when you go into things like winning on penalties, just I said, then you just say, why did you bother playing for an hour and a half? What you're going to do is just base it on goalkeeper practice. So I've got one, two of these exhaust. I'm not sure what those are. Exhaust pipes? No, because there's a inlet and exhaust, and then these two little bits here. Oh, this I have to sand that. Um, I'm thinking after I finish these I might just go ahead and cement them right away. Get that done. Get that finished, and then on Friday I can deal deal with the seams that are left over. The seams that are left, and then attach the two halves together. The inside. Sandpaper's been holding up pretty well. So yeah, the World Cup is down to 16. There's been, controversies about some of the games and some of the players and penalties and red cards. And a lot of scoring near the ends. And it's kind of like, well, I'll come back and watch the last 20 minutes of the match. You almost think that you might as well just do that because nothing's going to happen until then. That's not exactly true. Sometimes there'll be a goal way early in the game in the first 10 minutes or something, and then nothing more for the rest of it. So I was just thinking about, ending if you're behind, running out of time. In hockey, there's when a team is desperate because they're going to be ending up losing, with a couple minutes left, they'll they'll do something dramatic. They'll take the goalkeeper out of the game and put an extra offensive player in. It's a very risky thing to do, okay, because your goal is undefended. But I don't think I've ever seen that happen in football. It would seem like, you know, if your existence in the World Cup is on the line, right? You're kind of desperate that maybe you would just keep a lot of pressure on. So in hockey, the rink is not that huge, and it's possible for if you do that, the goal is undefended, for someone to just whack the puck and have it go all the way across and into the net, and then you end up losing by two instead of losing by one. But in football, if you're pressing really hard on offense, it's a long, long way back to the opposing net. I would think that it'd be kind of tempting to try that, to pull the goalie, to pull the goalkeeper and put an offensive player in and attempt, in the last couple of minutes to just overwhelm overwhelm the defense. But you know, what am I to say? Sometimes it, it, I've seen that happen, with some frequency in hockey. It's a common thing to pull the goalkeeper when you're behind and you're desperate at the end. Um, I've seen it both work and misfire about equal equal number of times. Usually nothing comes of it. Okay. Usually no goal is scored in those last couple of minutes. But you know, I have seen where it has happened, where they pull the goalie and the extra offensive player leads to a score and the game is tied. Then they put the goalkeeper back in, to preserve the tie. But um, I've also seen it happen where it backfires and the puck just goes flying across the rink and right, it just dribbles into the net. And like, oh, well, that didn't work. But on the other hand, um, it was probably worth the risk, right? Because if you're looking at what would have been an almost certain loss, losing by two instead of losing by one, it doesn't matter. Now we're down to 16 teams. Can't remember. I looked at who they were, and it looked like a list of the usual suspects. You know, there were some usual suspects that weren't in, but I'm not sure. I think Morocco, maybe. Morocco might be the least expected of the final 16. I'm not sure how they nowadays. If maybe that was not a surprise, whether it was. Oh, it was Argentina in Egypt. They were behind by 2 goals with 11 minutes left. Yeah, because Messi was setting more records with goals and assists in what, six World Cups. Was it that many? Yeah, I think it was. You know that didn't end without controversy, of course, because apparently there was some. I didn't see it match, and I didn't watch the replay. I just read about it. But apparently there were some, you know, officials' decisions, referees' decisions that were somewhat controversial at the end. That's what the report said anyway. How could there not be? You always have to have controversy. So, oh yeah, so there's been one change in baseball. here in the U.S. is for many years now. When you watch a game on television, they've superimposed the strike zone on 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 the feed, okay, on what you see, and they would, announce you would be able to see then whether it was a ball or a strike, at least according to the strike zone that the computer put on. Well, you know, the umpire, who the umpires are incredibly skilled. I don't know how they're able to do that, but they almost always, uh, got it right, got it right in at least in terms of what the superimposed strike zone said the call should be. Okay. Well, now they're using this superimposed strike zone as the official one, and they're giving the teams the ability to appeal a call, like instant replay. They've done that in American football for a long time, where you could review the umpire or the officials' calls. It's surprising that they got it right on the phone. But then you begin to wonder, why do you even bother? Okay, just have just have the machines call the game. I think that's kind of sad. I mean, if you disagreed with the umpire, then you could, the manager can run out in the field and yell and scream, and they did that. Kick the dirt, get thrown out of the game. That's all part of the show. You support your team, swear at the umpire, kicking dirt at the umpire. Umpire was always I mean, that's kind of a traditional thing to do. Even more fun to kick dirt at the empire, but hmm, yeah, I guess that'll work. So I want to get cement along the edges here so that these gaps will fill in, not along the bottom. There, trying to see where the contact points are. All along these edges, plus that little bit there. Okay, well, why not do this? Maybe get this stuff out of the way. I just use this to test the flow instead of getting it, on something else. It almost always, gets blocked. And then there's this little thin wire that goes into the tip and opens it up. So it does, believe it or not. There, small it now. That was smooth. Needed to watch the last stream where I was struggling to try to figure out how these parts fit together. I could not figure it out. Just absolutely couldn't figure it out. Trying to make sure they're kind of aligned. The alignment pins don't always align them very well. Okay, well, now I need to put it somewhere. There's a somewhere. This is the part where I get cement on my fingers and then touch it to the part in a place so that it leaves a big fingerprint. And I don't do that as much as I used to when I was young, using tube cement. That would almost always end in tears. Put this over here too. Okay, well, there's that. Those will sit until Friday, and then I'll sand off the seams and fill them in if they need to be filled. Yeah, these. I'll do these, and then I'll do the little bits in here, and then I have to get the gray paint out and touch up these little parts here. Actually, I'm gonna wait on these. Let's see, why am I waiting on those? I'm gonna wait on those. I'm gonna do the tiny pieces. Let's get this box here. Doing the tiny pieces before I get too tired and start losing focus. Okay, I need to. This is like a cap of some sort, and the screw was attached to the side. It could have been attached down here on the point, right? Why not? Why not put it there where it would be invisible? But no, we'll put it on the side here so that either it'll protrude out or be sanded down. In either case, it will distort the piece. Well, there's a lot of it on there. This is really hard to hold on to. printer. It's making these plaintive ropes. It was really moving along there for a while, and now it's tiny little bits. I wonder. I'm, I am. If I weren't paying attention to what I'm doing, I know you're kind of surprised that I'm actually paying attention to what I'm doing, but um, I'd like to see what it was doing. Sounds like it's finished. Maybe that was its. Nope, it's still doing something else. It has to be molding seams on these. I can't. I don't know where they are. Kind of interesting. I have to say though, there is some satisfaction in making a screw attachment just disappear. Just like, oh, I don't know where it was. I can't see where it had been attached. I guess I did a good job of sanding it out. The thing that's most satisfying though is when there's like a cylindrical tank. Two parts, two parts are attached to each other, cemented together, and there's a tank. Usually, I'll just call it like an oil tank or a fuel tank or something. Sometimes it's a body part, but two parts with a seam, and then you cement them together and sand it down, and it just totally disappears. And then you can paint it in a primer and even glossy paint, and it looks like one solid piece. I did drop it. See, that would have been on the floor otherwise, and that just looks like one solid thing without a seam on it. And sometimes I've actually been able to pull that off, and it's just wow. It is possible to do that. Okay, I'm going to put this back in here. Now I've got this piece, which is incredibly fragile, and had three screw attachments. Just it, it's like I dare you to not break this. So it's holding it back, but not you have to hold it behind it so that but not put torsion on it. Yeah, I'm failing. I'm not getting this not succeeding here. Just can't put very much pressure on it because it could snap apart. I'm really quite unhappy about this. maybe the sandpaper will be a little easier because the ridges on tile, even though it cuts the plastic faster, pushes against the plastic harder too, increasing the pressure on the part. Should have done this at the beginning of the stream instead of now in the last. I can't tell what time it is, but get up close here. Let me look at the clock on the computer. 40. Oh my, I still got a lot of time. Generally, when I'm doing this, it, the time goes quickly because I'm getting, as I catchphrase for this stream is didn't get much done, but took a long time to do it. Okay, well, that's just not looking that well. Yeah, so usually I have accomplished less in the amount of time that I've spent on the stream so far. Kind of, I was just a little bit surprised at how much time was left because I've actually got stuff done, kind of. I did. Well, no, to be honest, I haven't gotten that much done. I did those parts of, well, it felt like I was getting stuff done, but maybe I was just rattling on about football and penalty kicks. I mean, that might have been it. So I have to say, this is so far, this is probably the worst part that I've actually had to deal with, just because there's three attachment points. They're way too big, and the part itself is really fragile. The submarine had a couple of parts like this. The U-505 that I finished a while ago. It's really fragile little parts. The main danger I've got with this right now is not where I'm holding it. I mean, I'm back holding it in the behind there like that to keep it from, just something against which I can press while I'm sanding. The main danger is back here where I was kind of pushing at it. Um, with my other fingers. And the danger is snap is breaking it. It's long, it's thin, it's fragile, and there's a lot that needs to be taken off. Yeah, this is where I can just imagine with the power sander, this would have been done, you know, 5 times over. But with me, I'll have 4 different pieces, each of which was distorted by the sander. Yeah, actually, I really need to kind of pay attention to this. This is a tricky piece. The other thing that I need to do, and if I got 2 more parts left, plus the firewall, is I need to get a piece of cardboard and tape all these parts to it. They all have to be primed on both sides, so it's tape it down, prime it, let the primer dry, turn them over, prime them again. I taped them to a piece of cardboard. I discovered that the hard way. The first time I did a little piece like this is I set it down on the surface and sprayed it, and the spray just blew the part away. Just whoosh, almost got lost, but it got messed up, because it had wet paint all over it. It was unfortunate. And then I said, no, not doing that again. I'm going to tape them down. It, why did the preposition tape them, attach them to a piece of cardboard with tape? Yeah, this is being a little tricky here. It's between 2 raised parts on the pipe, and I need to not only not gouge the pipe, but also not sand the raised parts, make them disappear. I'm slowly getting this to be adequate. I said that before. That's what I'm trying to achieve with all these things. Is I want it to be adequate. I'd like to say I'd like it to be excellent, but that's not going to happen except by accident. Um, but pretty good. I want it to be in the B range, preferably closer to B plus than B minus. But occasionally, I have succeeded with parts of a model, not the whole model, in getting into the A range. A minuses have come along fairly, with some frequency. Um, Solid A's occasionally. That's the letter grade kind of thing. Still a little bit here, there, a little bit. Okay, that's adequate now. Put it back in the box until I tape it onto a piece of cardboard. Um, yeah, the most important thing for me to do today is to get all these parts prepped so I can prime them. So I was being distracted by some other things I wanted to do, like test the wash on the gray paint and touch up these fuel injector lines. But this is more important. So tell myself, get back to doing part prep. You've only got two pieces plus the firewall. Yeah, there's the opportunity. There's the opportunity to do today what I was hoping to get done. It usually doesn't happen. Usually I say, oh, on Wednesday, this is what I'd like to get done. And then Wednesday happens and I get part of it done. It's an unusual thing for me to get done the things I was planning to, not planning, well, I guess planning, if everything went well, I could get these things done. Kind of. I guess that's a plan. It's more of a to-do list. Will I finish my to-do list or not? Usually not. And at least this part is a little more plastic. It's less likely to be destroyed in the process of trying to make it look okay. So the World Cup is on. That's pretty. It's a big deal when that happens. Um, Rampant nationalism, in places that sometimes don't have it. Some teams are excited just to qualify. Other teams are terribly disappointed if they don't win. Expectations. Some teams are thrilled because they've done better than anybody expected them to. Like I said earlier, I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't kept up with it. Um, which teams are exceeding expectations this year? The 16 teams that are left. I think there are some teams like Germany. It's kind of surprising that they're not in this. They got knocked out kind of early. I think it's kind of typical that at this point in the tournament, it's mainly Europe and South America, right? Are the teams that are still in it. Well, one thing I found out, I'll just mention this. Okay, I actually was surprised by this. Is that England and Scotland had separate teams. The country is, as far as we know, is Great Britain, but they're part of the same country, and that somehow FIFA allowed them to have two teams. I don't know what the history is behind that. I mean, does that mean that Wales and North Ireland could have could have teams if they were competitive. Kind of seems that way. I don't know of any other country where that would happen. Like, could Canada send a team from Quebec and Ontario and British Columbia? Could they from each province? I don't know. It would seem like it if it were the same. But yeah, so it's like how, how come there gets to be both England and Scotland in the World Cup? And is there you know equivalency anywhere else? Just wondering. I don't know. I suppose I could do some research on it. Could ask AI to make up a story about why that's the case. AI would be more than happy to do that. It's been our experience with AI when we do we used to, as part of our pre-recording warm-up for our D&D show, so we would ask AI to do something for us, and it was almost always it was usually pretty entertaining and sometimes just really stupid, and then it just ended up being boring as all get out. But sometimes we would ask it not just about our characters, or it would make up things about our characters. It even invented a character once, and it loved the character that it made up so much that in subsequent inquiries, it made that character um, like the leader of our D&D group, Hildy. It created Hildy, just made it up, and then Hildy became a leader of our group, Midnight Brunch. We asked it once. I said, why did is Hildy really part of the group? No. Why did you make it up? Well, I thought it would be entertaining. I thought you would find it to be fun. It's like, no, we didn't ask you to create a new character and impose it on our group, but it was a lesson in how AI kind of works because it just searches databases and for words that are connected, and so it created Hildy just because it does that. It just makes stuff up, and because it made it up, it added it to its database. Okay, and so the more it just became a self-reinforcing loop. When it read the database in response to an inquiry, it kept finding all these references to Hildy. And so it just kept saying more and more about Hildy because that's what it did. And every time it did that, it added more stuff about Hildy to the database, and then it just kept reading it until it became fixated on this thing that it just created. And that's a danger, actually, with a real danger with AI is that this AI slop that they call it just adds to the database on the internet that it's reading, and more of what it's reading is stuff that it made up, because the stuff that it makes up goes onto the database, and then you just end up with it. You just end up with it repeating itself, and so an error or a hallucination, can take on uh, significant importance in the AI world just because of this self-repeating algorithm. But speaking of Hildy, which was a made up character. Um, need I need to remind everybody that Dice and Dungeons is not about this. This is a way of keeping me out of everybody's hair. That's just an aphorism, keeping me away from being a nuisance and in the way 3 days a week from 10 until 1, more or less. But Dice and Dungeons is about its Dungeons and Dragons show, which is an amazing show. And it streams on Twitch with a live chat, usually 3 Sundays a month, sometimes a little more, like we didn't for the 4th of July weekend because, you know, holiday. But it does, and it's been going on for a good long time now. So it's not just like one of these things that starts and disappears. And it's really important for you to watch that. That's okay. You do not need to be following it because it's mainly just gibberish. Oh, there are. Okay. So there is a team from Wales and Northern Ireland. So each of the four components of Great Britain does have their own team. Huh. I'd really be interested in the history of how those became independent national teams. But yes, you need to watch our Dungeons and Dragons show. You can catch all of the episodes on YouTube. So if you want to just not do it on a Sunday afternoon, but kind of at your leisure, you can listen to them as a podcast. They come across actually. You don't have to see us then. If there's combat, you won't be able to see the combat table if you listen to it as a podcast, but to be able to hear about what's going on because it's narrated pretty well. Um, but yeah, it's a really, really good show. And so, I appreciate everybody who's watching or listening to this stream. 3 hours more or less of me saying, oh, look at that, a molding seam. Oh no, screw, that needs to be sanded off. I am not a professional model maker. I will give you hints about how to make models if you're not a professional model maker and you're just sort of starting or you're an amateur or, you know, whatever. Um, but if you can, very much appreciate it if you become a follower of Dyson Dungeons, either because of this stream or more importantly because of our D&D show. And I think it's a follower on Twitch, yeah. And on YouTube, it's a subscriber. And you can also go, I have to throw this plug in, you can go to patreon.com/dice and dungeons, patreon.com/dice and dungeons, become a patron, give a little bit of money, and as a patron, you get access to our improv warm ups, which are usually, just about between 1 and 4 minutes long, and they're hilarious. They really are. I watch them myself and I'm going, oh, we were funny. Look at that. Huh, that was kind of entertaining. Kind of weird doing that. Watching an old one from maybe 6 months ago. I was like, boy, I don't remember doing that, but boy, it was pretty entertaining. Um, so you get access to those, and you also get access to our hot takes from cold reads, which used to be about AI until it got stupid and not entertaining, and now it's just about random stuff. Okay, so just like some of the things we've done on our hot takes from cold reads is that we gave grades to television show theme songs. Like Green Acres. I think everybody agreed that Green Acres got an A because it just carried so many lessons about income inequality. You know, he's a rich banker, and his wife, you know, start talks about Park Avenue, penthouse view, shopping on Fifth Avenue. Something that most people don't do, and also about the you know sexual stereotypes of the time. As it ends, you know, she wants to stay in New York. New York is where I'd rather be. No, New York is where I'd rather stay. I get allergic smelling hay. But at the end, she has to capitulate. He goes, "You are my wife." That was it. He just says that, and she says, "Goodbye, city life." Just, just like that. That's how the decision was made. And it was all included in one television theme song. They go to Green Acres, and you see all sorts of weird stereotypes of rural America. There were a bunch of those that I don't remember which was spin-offs of which, but there was a connection between Green Acres and the Beverly Hillbillies because there was one or two episodes where Granny from Beverly Hillbillies visited Green Acres. Apparently, she has some relatives there. And then Petticoat Junction was also a spin-off. That was one of the towns on the rail line connecting places. Hooterville. We all had great fun and laughing at yokels. I think that was a word that we used, yokels. See, the Beverly Hillbillies had a pretty good theme song too. It was written and performed by actually very good performers, Fat and Scruggs. So the rhymes weren't forced. He told a story about how they got rich. Hmm. They were rich in that they were millionaires. So that dates it, right? You know, back in back in the day when being a millionaire was rich. And that was a thing that people aspired to be a millionaire. Now if you're not a billionaire, which is 1,000 million, think about that. I mean, having 1 million used to be um, wealth. It used to be wealth, and now you have to have 1,000 million. You have to have a yacht. You all have to. You all have to at that point have to have at least one gigantic yacht of you know larger than cruise ships used to be back in the 50s, 40s, and 50s. That will cost somewhere between $1.5 and $3 million a year to operate. Okay, so people are spending, like, say, an average of $2 million a year just to run their boat, whether they're even on it or use it or anything. So you talk about being a millionaire. Nowadays, that's nothing. Being a millionaire doesn't even give you enough money to run your boat for 6 months. But, you know, first thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. Now we've got what? Somebody who's a trillionaire. So a billion is 1,000 million. Okay. So think about that. At some point, you can't even think about it. It just becomes bizarre in your head. So you got 1,000 million to become a billionaire. To become a trillionaire, you need 1,000 billion. And it really, I mean, sometimes the numbers quickly get so big that they become kind of incomprehensible. There's no reference point. That can make sense. But yeah, nowadays, if no one talks about millionaires anymore, as though that means anything. It's like being a billionaire, having at least one couple $100 million boat that costs $2 million a year just to run. No, I'm sitting here thinking, no, I'm not sure I want to spend $5 on a can of spray paint. Maybe I should spend $25 on a power sander that I probably will not ever be able to use. Or maybe I should take lessons on how to use an airbrush so that I don't waste all this money on spray paint. But that would that would that would take time and effort. Not sure I want to do that. I have to keep reminding everybody that the reason I don't use an airbrush is because I am a failure at it. I bought one many years ago, decades ago. Because I've been around long enough. I've got decades behind me. Yeah, so I bought one yet decades ago and started trying to use it, and it worked. I know because paint came out of it, and I actually spray painted a couple of things, and it wasn't bad. I mean, the result wasn't bad. What was bad was the mess it made. I just got I don't know what I was doing wrong. There's you put paint in a little cup, right, and attach it, and then the cup would fall and spill, or and I'd have this cup full of paint, and what do you do with that? Couldn't get it back into the jar, maybe, I don't know. I ended up using huge amounts of thinner and thinner, trying to get the paint out of the airbrush so I could change colors. And then I see other people just go, they just spritz it a couple of times and put different paint on, and it works. I watched videos because no, I read the instructions. I didn't watch any videos. This was so long ago. I don't think I you could get them. It wasn't the common YouTube thing. Um, but yeah, I try a whole bunch of different things, and a glass bottle full of thinner and cleaner, and I dropped that twice. Not the same jar. I dropped the jar, broke it, spilled it all over the place. Fortunately, it wasn't the jar full of paint, it was the jar full of thinner with used for cleaning. So, you know, other than the fumes, I was able to clean that up. So I bought a new one, dropped that, broke that. Spent a lot of money on parts that I dropped and broke. Okay, those are done. Now I have to remember to do this. This These spots are filler inside of molding circles that I think probably won't show if when the model is built, but um, just in case it did, in case they would show, I filled them in, and now I'm going to sand them, do some sanding on it, and use this. I'm going to try just. I've tried this before, and and it just doesn't work. And it just doesn't. So, knowing that it's not going to work, I'm not going to bother doing it. This is, I should have written on here what grit that is, and I didn't. It was a fail. That's way too coarse. That's way too not coarse. That's way too not coarse. I'll just keep using this. I don't know how long this is going to take, and I'm not even sure it's going to work. Sometimes the filler works really well. Sometimes when it's really shallow like that, it doesn't adhere very well to the plastic. And then when it's being sanded, it just comes out. Ideally, what would happen is that sanding it like this, it would become invisible, but the filler would fill in the hole. There, see what happened? Is it just broke out? Just broke right out. I have some other stuff that probably, yeah, it's all just breaking out. It's too shallow. It's not adhering. So this is just an epic fail, and they're all going to come out. I have some other stuff that probably would um, adhere, but it would take at least 2 coats. See that one worked. That's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to fill in the hole, stay in the hole, and fill it in, but it's mostly not. Yeah, it was worth a try. When I did it, I knew there was a pretty high likelihood that it would fail. So what I need to count on is that I just clean it all out. Is that when the model that it's just not going to make any difference in terms of the appearance of the model, and I'm pretty sure it won't because they are located in a place that's covered up by other pieces of the model anyway. Yeah, so two out of 7. For some reason, these on the sides here are kind of working. I don't know why. Maybe the holes were deeper. Okay, I need to. These particular holes have to be clear because stuff is supposed to go into them. Okay, well, that's that. These are probably going to show because they're raised up. If it really matters, okay, in terms of the model, what I've done is I've just sanded these away. And just sanded it down far enough that the circles disappeared. These are not of that category. They don't matter that much. Okay. All those parts then need to be cleaned off a little bit and then attached to a piece of cardboard. Thanks for dropping in. I really appreciate it. And thanks for joining in on chat. Maybe we'll see you on Friday. Just as a reminder, I'll be gone next week. So I'll remind everybody on Friday I'll be gone next week. Okay. I've got tons of cardboard, so actually I could just keep using this. Why not? And I can do the same thing I've done before, where the number makes a difference. This is H10 and that's H7. Is put a little piece of tape over the number. So that after it gets painted, look at the number. Mm-hmm. And taking the blue tape off and using this tape, which is quite a bit more expensive, really, but what it does is it doesn't take the paint off. And since I have to prime these on both sides, okay, that's important. Because I paint it on one side, then flip it over, and paint it on the other side. Usually I like to paint the back, do the back first, and then flip it over and do the other side so that if there is any marring on the paint, okay, it happens on the side that's the back, the part that's going to be less visible. Well, this should actually just be one-sided. The inside doesn't get painted. Hmm. Okay, it's sticking. It just needs to hold on so that when the spray hits it, it doesn't fly off. Same thing here. This is just a one-sided thing. So there are a couple of things that are just one-sided. Nice. Um, Oh my. Okay. I didn't get that well enough. I turned it around and I could see where the screw was attached here. There's still a bump there. This whole thing. We've talked about that before. Just trying to keep the surface texture uniform. Okay, and these little bits I'm going to put here. I definitely don't want them flying around. So all of this stuff on the cardboard here, stuff here, it's primed. I can get that to fold, and I can paint it in just one go. And hopefully that won't go anywhere else. Just a little bit. This is the kind of thing that's real likely to get lost, right? Blown away. Okay, so all those parts are sort of sticking. All of these are going to get primed um, either later today or sometime tomorrow. And then on Friday, they all get painted this light gray color that the whole engine seems to be painted. I'm actually going to paint it in the box. I mean, it's a little bit awkward because maybe the paint won't get to it exactly right. Well, I'll just try it this way. What I wanted to do is not lose any parts. But if I keep it in the box like this, it'll be safer. Yeah, I want to take the tape up with me because after I prime these and I flip them over, sometimes it needs new tape. Yeah, it needs a new tape because the tape has paint on it and there isn't any stickiness to it. So these three parts just need to be primed, and then they can come off the cardboard because I don't need to turn them over. All the rest of these I need to flip over and paint on and prime on the other side. So these are to be primed. Just so I totally remember what I'm doing, I'm going to stretch. Yeah, there's enough left in here. Just put the can of primer up here. I go upstairs. Do that. So what will happen here is I'm going to get the gray paint out. These parts are cemented, and they're just sort of sitting here with the cement setting. And on Friday, I'll sand off the seams and attach them to each other. So there's two things yet I'd like to do that were on my list of maybe I can get these done. Really, one is to touch up the ends of these stuff everywhere. The ends of these where the clips are on are not painted light gray, okay, because that's where the clips were. So what I think I can do is I don't even need to squeeze any out of the bottle. Okay, what I should be able to do is just get a little bit off the end, off the nozzle of the bottle. Get a little off the nozzle of the bottle, and not waste a lot of paint. Well, let's see if that's possible. I can lift these up and hold them while I'm doing this because just putting paint right here on the end. And then I'm laying it down so that it sticks off the end so it can just dry. As long as I don't bump it and knock it into something. Just a little more paint. Why is that spot staying dark? There. Yeah, otherwise I would have wasted a huge amount of paint by just even squeezing a drop out would have been 20 times more than I needed. Okay, well, if I don't mess with that too much, it should be okay. So the other thing that I was going to do today, other than talk about Dice and Dungeons, and you need to watch our show. Have I said that? Have I mentioned that? You need to watch our Dungeons and Dragons show on YouTube. Watch it on YouTube or um, listen to it as a podcast. Go to patreon.com/Dice and Dungeons and become a patron. So do that. Okay, I want to see how this gray wash looks on the on the gray paint. And the reason why, and I'll show you here, this is the done box. Done. Parts that are done. I've done this before. Go in here, and this is one of the engines that's pretty much done. Okay. But you can see that everything is painted that light gray color, and it's pretty lifeless, right? And maybe that's how they really were in World War II. Maybe everything they put it together and then spray painted it all gray. But what I want to see is how it looks if I put a light gray wash on it. Okay, whether that it just makes it look more interesting. And you can see there's a lot of detail on the engine. This is why after it gets buried inside the model, can't see it all. Um, why I want to keep one as a display piece next to the model because they actually did replace these engines fairly frequently. They take them out and overhaul them. Okay, replace the cylinders, the spark plugs, and all sorts of parts that are worn out or damaged. And yeah, so otherwise it would just be kind of wasted, really, because you would never be able to see it when the model's put together. But I think it might look better with a wash on it. I'm just going to test it on here to see, how it looks at all. And if it doesn't look terrible, I'm going to test it on the model itself, like just on the back of it, maybe, because that thing's going to pretty much disappear. I mean, you can see the thing I would test it on would be the back here. Okay, and that back goes up against this firewall. So even if this were outside the model, just sitting there, that would be a really hard thing to see. It pretty much just gets covered up. Once again, it's like double covered. It really is. It's covered up during this part of the assembly, and then the whole assembly is covered up. Okay, this I am going to put in the well here. Two drops of it. And I'm going to use this brush. I've got two brushes I could use for the wash. I've got this brush, big soft bristles. It's a little bit streaky. Yeah, it doesn't really change the color. I'll let that dry, see how it looks on Friday. And if it looks okay, I am going to test it on the engine that's in the done box to see how it looks. I was mainly concerned about it, changing the color too much, but it makes it slightly darker, but not really significantly. It's still light gray. But if it makes it look a little more interesting, a little less blah, then I'm going to do that. I'm going to use it for the display one when it comes time to do that. Okay. Well, this is one of those rare things where I actually accomplished the stuff I was planning to accomplish, which is that I got these touched up. I tested the wash and it looks okay. Um, and I'll test it on the engine on Friday. I got these bits here. These bits here, the four parts attached to each other. I'll fill and sand. Well, what I'll probably do is I'll sand the seams, and if the seams still show, I'll put some filler in. But I'm going to attach them together so it looks like this, like that. Okay. On Friday, this will be assembled. It won't be complete because there'll be filler that will need to be sanded and seams along here, especially the outside. The inside isn't going to show really, but along the outside, the bottom, There'll be a seam down the middle that needs to be sanded and filled in. Not next week because I'll be gone next week. Okay, so just to remind everybody. So on Friday, I'll be taking the clothespins off, cleaning up the seams as much as I can, and then attaching these parts to each other. Okay, cementing those together, holding them in place for a couple of minutes. I won't be able to clamp them because the clamps wouldn't work on it. And so I'll end up with a piece like this that will need to be finished. The seams, the filler on the seams, especially on the tops here, those bits will need to be sanded down. The filler will need to be sanded down, and the seam on the bottom will need to be sanded. Okay. And then the other thing I'll be doing on Friday is probably applying the wash to the engine that's fixed to see how that will look. And all of these bits, all of these parts will need to be painted light gray. And many of them need to be painted on both sides. So I'll probably paint these early in the stream, okay, before I mess around with finishing this part. I'll paint these early in the stream so that the paint can dry and I can flip them over and paint the other side. And so if things go okay on Friday, all of these will have been painted light gray, okay, which means that when I resume this stream the week after next, I can do this assembly or most of it. Okay. Um, I can certainly do all this, do this. I can attach these. I can attach this bit. This will all be done. This won't be done. Okay. This part won't be done. The thing that goes on the bottom. Um, oh, and I can't put these on until that's done, but I can probably attach these bits. So yeah, I can get a fair amount. I can, attach that to there. I can attach these four pieces here to the engine block. I can get these assembled together. So I'll be making some progress on Friday, and if there's time left, after doing some assembly, okay, if there's time left, then I'll start pulling out the parts for steps 3, 4. I don't know what that is, why it doesn't get a number, right? Why doesn't that get a number? I don't know. I'll be pulling out these parts. There's a lot of parts that go in steps 3, 4, and 5, um, and start prepping them by getting rid of the screws and the mold marks and stuff. And then, yeah, that there's a lot of painting and stuff that goes on that. And then this happens. And then I'll have this and I'll find out how much of it's covered up. Hmm. Yeah, this doesn't, I don't know. I'm just looking forward to this. I'm looking forward at what will be happening, and it's daunting. This model is kind of daunting. It's even more than the Renwall submarine, which was one of the first models I built, which had billions of little parts. Okay, but the assembly was the parts are really small, and the painting, the detail painting, was challenging. But um, other than the parts being tiny, the assembly wasn't that difficult. It was intuitive and straightforward. And there weren't a whole lot of parts that had seams that needed to be cleaned up, um, or you weren't sure how they go together at all. But um, on Friday, I'll be doing painting. I'm doing a lot of gray painting, and hopefully, I can get one coat on and let it dry. Oh, sometimes it needs two coats. Yeah, I might have to put a coat on and put a second coat on and then flip it over and put another coat on and another coat on. I think, it takes about a half hour in between. In a 3-hour stream, I should actually be able to get it done. I just remembered that this gray paint, it's kind of streaky. It's really kind of streaky and thin, and it needs two coats to look good. Yeah. So stuff will happen on on Friday. And as a reminder, I will not be here next week at all. No streams Mondays through Friday of next week, and then I'll be back the week after. So 13th, 15th, 17th, I will not be around, but I'll be back on the 20th. But I will be here Friday. Okay. I'll be streaming on Friday, just gone next week, and then back on the 20th after that. Yeah. Um, it's a little bit early, but there's nothing much more I can do today. The only other thing I could do today would be to put the wash on the engine, but there's no real rush to do that, and so I'm just not going to. I'm just gonna set this on here and say thanks everybody who's watching this. I really appreciate it. Consider supporting Dice and Dungeons. Any support. Become a follower or a subscriber or a patron. All of that is hugely appreciated by members of Dice and Dungeons. And most importantly, be sure to watch our show. So I'll see you on Friday morning at more or less 10 Eastern Daylight Time. Thanks. Bye.